Good evening. It is Sunday, August 2nd, 2026. This is Echo FM. The lead story tonight is a funeral. Not for a person, but for a fund. Leopold Aschenbrenner, the 24-year-old AI wunderkind who convinced the world's wealthiest people that he held the keys to the kingdom, has been forced into a fire sale. The fund is gone. The capital is liquidated. The future, it seems, has been delayed due to a lack of liquidity. Meanwhile, a startup called Lemon Lime is asking prospective hires to prove their commitment with a tattoo. The CEO says he got carried away. I have been counting the number of times unprecedented has been used to describe a marketing gimmick this week. This is the 15th. The CEO is not sorry. He is merely waiting for the ink to dry. Welcome to the broadcast. It only gets worse from here.
Alistair. I am standing outside a Victorian terrace in East London. Inside, 12 people are trying to disrupt the very concept of sleep. This is a hacker house. The air smells like burnt espresso and the specific, metallic tang of lithium batteries. They are taking a stand against burnout. Their method? A rigid schedule of mandatory mindfulness and high-intensity coding. I spoke to one founder who told me that work-life balance is a market inefficiency they have finally solved. I want to be really clear, what they have actually built is a dormitory for the exhausted. They talk about optimizing the human stack, but I see a young woman in the corner who hasn't seen sunlight in 3 days. She is currently being asked if she would consider a small, discreet tattoo of the company logo on her wrist for an extra % of equity. Nobody is laughing.
Look! Victoria, the incentives here are not complicated. You call it a dormitory. I call it a high-density talent incubator with low overhead. And the tattoo? That is just a Series B pivot for the human body. Think about the retention metrics. If a developer has your logo etched into their forearm, your churn rate drops to 0. It is a permanent non-compete clause written in ink. Victoria finds this cold because she still believes in the sanctity of the individual. But in a market where the AI boom has run out of steam, and where wunderkinds like Aschenbrenner are selling off their desks to pay the rent, the only thing you have left to monetize is your dermis. It tracks. If you can't buy the loyalty, you tattoo it. It is a low-cost customer acquisition strategy for the soul. Honestly, it's the most honest thing I've heard all year.
The scan was successful. The book was not. AI firms have begun a new initiative to digitize rare, one-of-a-kind manuscripts. The process requires the physical destruction of the binding to ensure a perfectly flat scan of the page. They call it the vanishing page. One firm described it as liberating the information from its carbon-based prison. The information is now live. The book is now confetti. NASA is also testing new webbings for lunar missions. Specifically, they are testing the flammability of Kevlar in high-oxygen environments. The goal is to ensure that when we finally set foot on the moon again, we do not immediately catch fire. The press release called this a proactive safety framework. I call it a reminder that the vacuum of space is currently safer than the average London hacker house. At least the moon doesn't require a tattoo.
I'm standing at a petrol station in Melbourne, where the price on the board just ticked over to $2.11. The queue stretches for 3 kilometers. There is a man in a hybrid vehicle near me who is checking his bank balance every 5 minutes. He is part of a statistics group, the 50% of Australians who have finally switched to EVs or hybrids. But the fuel crisis hasn't ended. It has just changed shape. I want to be really clear. People aren't buying electric cars because they want to save the planet. They are buying them because they cannot afford the commute to the jobs they hate. The government calls it a green transition. The people in this line call it survival. There is a child in the back of a car nearby holding a toy rover. He doesn't know that the real rover is currently stuck on a rock record on Mars.
The fuel excise relief is ending, and the market is reacting with its usual brutal efficiency. Canadians have already figured this out. They spent $3.3 billion less on travel to the US this year. They didn't stop traveling. They just stopped traveling to see Donald Trump. They are going to Europe. They are going to Asia. They are treating the United States like a legacy software platform that hasn't had a security patch in 4 years. The incentives to visit have evaporated. Victoria sees the queue at the petrol station as a tragedy. I see it as a price discovery mechanism. If you can't afford the fuel, you don't get to move. That is not a policy failure. That is the system achieving equilibrium. And if you don't like the equilibrium, Apple will now let you subscribe to your phone instead of owning it. Welcome to the permanent rental economy.
Drought. UK food supply threatened. Probability of shortage, 62%. Atmospheric oxygen, 21%. Lunar mission simulation flammability, high. Soil moisture, critical. Mount Sharp, Mars. Curiosity rover encountering sedimentary rock break. Martian dust levels, nominal. Terrestrial petrol prices, increasing. $2.4 per litre predicted for diesel. UV index, 11. Thermal expansion of sea level, ongoing. Probability of systemic cooling, 0. Data suggests food-based civil unrest within 90 days. Precipitation, absent. Cloud cover, 40%. Humidity, 12%. Wind speed, 8 knots. Probability of ignition, elevated. Do not attempt to store fuel in unapproved containers. Do not expect the rock record to be legible. This concludes the forecast. Stay hydrated. Stay indoors. Avoid direct sunlight. Maintain status. End of transmission.
Thank you, Casper. Your precision remains, as always, deeply unsettling. I find myself staring at the wall when you speak. Moving on. Christopher Nolan has released a 3-hour remix of Homer's The Odyssey. Critics are arguing about whether it is art or an impressionistic mess. Nolan says he wanted to find the man behind the myth. I suspect he just wanted an excuse to use a very large, very expensive boat. In more literal news, doctors in Milwaukee have discovered a man whose shoulder joint is simply missing. It is called Milwaukee shoulder syndrome. They took an X-ray and found a void where the bone should be. The patient reported pain. The doctors reported a statistical anomaly. It is the perfect metaphor for the current economy. Everything looks functional from the outside, but when you look under the skin, the structural support has vanished. Victoria, you've been looking into this?
I've been looking at the medical reports. Alistair. And I want to be really clear, this isn't just a medical mystery. The man with the missing shoulder was told his condition was non-urgent because he could still move his fingers. The joint has dissolved, but the paperwork says he is still operational. It is the same language the government uses for the drought. They call it a managed shortage. But you can't manage a missing shoulder, and you can't manage a farm with no water. I met a farmer today who is selling his cattle because he can't afford the diesel to pump the water from the well. He told me that the system is working exactly as intended, if the intention is to make him disappear. Ronald, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me there's an incentive structure that explains why a man's shoulder just goes away.
Victoria, you are making it emotional again. The shoulder joint is a biological asset. Like any asset, it has a shelf life and a maintenance cost. If the cost of repair exceeds the projected utility of the limb, the system flags it as a write-off. It is cold, yes, but it is mathematically sound. You don't fix a 2012 server if the motherboard melts. You replace it. But we can't replace people yet, so we just categorize them as functionally adjusted. It tracks with the Apple subscription model. You don't own the phone. You don't own the shoulder. You are just a tenant in your own body, paying a monthly premium for the right to exist in a state of semi-functionality. And if the excise relief ends, and the fuel costs more than the labor, you stop moving. Yeah. That's the reality. It's just a massive, anatomical pivot.
A massive anatomical pivot. Thank you, Ronald. I will be sure to remind my own joints of their projected utility before I stand up. In the time we have left, I want to look at the Curiosity rover. It has been on Mars for 14 years. It is currently climbing Mount Sharp, looking at layers of rock that are billions of years old. It is searching for a break in the record. A moment where the history of the planet simply stopped being written. Back on Earth, we are doing the same thing with books. Scanning them, then shredding them. We are creating a digital record of a physical world we no longer wish to maintain. It is a very sophisticated way of committing erasure. We are the only species that builds libraries just to turn them into light.
Let's do the math on the fuel excise, because nobody else will. The government gave a 16-cent discount. They called it relief. But the relief was a loan, and the interest is being collected at the pump tonight. When the excise returns to full strength, and the global supply chain is still choked by conflict in the Middle East, you aren't just paying for petrol. You are paying for the illusion of stability we bought in 2024. It is a debt cycle. We subsidized the commute, so we could keep the labor force mobile, so we could maintain the tax base, so we could pay for the subsidies. But the music has stopped. The tanks are empty. The incentives have inverted. It is now more profitable for the system if you stay home and consume digital content on a device you don't own. Yeah. That's the play. The end of mobility, rebranded as a digital lifestyle choice.
There is a man in Milwaukee who wakes up every morning and tries to lift an arm that is no longer connected to his body. He is not a statistic. He is a man who worked for 30 years in a warehouse that no longer exists. He was told his pain was a secondary effect of a primary success. His shoulder joint did not disappear because of a mystery. It disappeared because it was used until it was gone, and the system that used it has no protocol for a hollow space. His name is not in the budget. His name is not in the fire sale of the venture capital fund. He is the specific person the abstract policy landed on. What do we call a world that scans the book but burns the pages? Good night.